I'm Adam Collins, he's Jeff Lemon, and this is the Final Words IPL Speed Round, our twice-weekly attempt to wrap up all the interesting bits and pieces from the Indian Premier League season 2021. Hello, Jeff. The three games we're looking at through the week today all followed a bit of a familiar pattern, which started at Chennai, where Mumbai held on against KKR. By that I mean every side was hard held with the bat. No one was exploding for the most part, and it meant that you had to do most of your work early in the game to lay a foundation.
It was a strange sort of contrast because after the Punjab Rajasthan game with 220 apiece, suddenly it was back to kind of, if they'd had T20s in the early 90s, this is what they would have been like. You know, you bat first, you get 150 odd, it doesn't look like enough, and then the team batting second just can't quite get any gas going. So we saw two teams lose chasing, and then in the third match last night, Rajasthan probably should have lost chasing, except Chris Morris pulled off a miracle for them at the end. But yeah, it was tough work for batting out there.
So there was a real premium on class, and we saw that from Suryakumar Yadav, who in that first game for Mumbai made a brisk half century, and that ended up being the difference between the two teams.
The shot of the last three matches for mine was the sweep shot that SKY played that was about 3 feet outside his off stump, and he somehow reached across to it and wristed it through backward square leg. Just ridiculous stuff. Gliding the fast bowlers, that flick for six off his pads from Pat Cummins. There was sort of some helicopter flourish in the way he was wristing the ball around it. He just looks $1 million every time he comes out to bat. So that's super exciting. But it was really hard to time the ball. We've seen a lot of these slowish wickets now, particularly at Chennai, but it was surprising to see the same sort of game unfolding at Mumbai in the third match. That it's all about bowlers taking the pace off, bowling cutters. That's what Andre Russell was able to do really well, to bag a 5-wicket haul inside 2 overs.
Yeah, and I suppose that's the other side of it, isn't it? That if you're a class player, you can prevail. But these quick bowlers who, when we think of them in the IPL context, it's all aggression, it's all power. But a bowler like Russell, indeed a bowler like Pat Cummins, who in effect, their greatest asset is their bag of tricks, not how muscular they can be at the crease.
Yeah, exactly right. It's having the variations to make it work. And that was the case with Rahul Chahar as well, the leg spinner for Mumbai, who bowled a gorgeous spell. Really, really enjoyed watching him bowl. He was bowling quick leg breaks, but there was still some drift for him, some dip, some turn, and he just pegged back KKR every time in the chase. He got the top 4 out, and the last of those was Nitesh Rana, who got stumped, and that's what started the slide towards the end. So, you know, they needed 31 from 31 balls. You would have thought they should be able to make that work, but it didn't. The wickets just kept falling, and as the batsmen tried to force the pace, they couldn't time their shots on that surface.
And the batting conditions got yet more difficult in the 6th game, also at Chennai, where 149 was enough for RCB to hold off Sunrisers Hyderabad, who fell 6 runs short. Glenn Maxwell, top scored player of the match, 59 from 41. In the middle order there, able to bridge Kohli and AB de Villiers and the finishers. It's working really well for the Final Words IPL correspondent.
Well, he had a great game because it wasn't easy for him. He was 9 off 16 deliveries, and then pretty abruptly he was 19 off 18 deliveries. He turned it around pretty quickly, decided to take a couple of risks against Shahbaz Nadeem, the left-arm orthodox spinner, who was bowling really nicely as well. Had that chastening test match against England and was unlucky not to get to bowl on the friendlier spin pitches later in that series, but bowled really nicely in that game the other night. Maxwell had to take some risks. He had Kohli just ticking over with him at a run a ball for Kohli for his 33. So that partnership between Kohli and Maxwell is starting to develop some chemistry, with Kohli opening and Maxwell coming in at 4. Devdutt Padikkal in his first game back couldn't do anything much. But yeah, we saw how difficult it was, given that AB de Villiers came in down the order and couldn't make a big score. Just couldn't get going. They needed Maxwell to stay to the end, and he did. He got out off the last ball of the innings.
Yeah, Rashid Khan was virtually unhittable, wasn't he? Only 17 runs from his 4 overs. A debate around AB, while the tracks are slow, and that's okay, that's just part of it this year with the IPL, the games being condensed to only a number of venues, there will be slower pitches, we know that's the case. With that in mind, maybe AB coming up the order alongside Kohli and Maxwell could be the answer? Yeah,
there's definitely that. That's what the discussion is about. A lot of a lot of people watching the tournament don't like seeing him down at 5, and you can understand that reasoning, that if you've got such a good player, surely you want to maximise their exposure to the bowling. But he's also there as someone who can play in so many different ways. He can, if they have a problem, he's likely to be able to fix it. If they need a fast flurry, he's more likely to be able to provide it. And giving a player like Padikkal the freedom at the top of the order, maybe they're more likely to get the best out of him. So maybe it's a balancing of all of their assets, I guess, across the two perspectives. But yeah, look, Rashid Khan, who you mentioned, 17 runs off the bat plus an extra, ridiculous across 4 overs in this format. They were just trying to see him off. I liked that we had a Shabazz off as well, because we had Shabazz Ahmed facing the bowling of Shabazz Nadeem, the double Shabazz, if you will, and then the chase just followed a similar pattern, because David Warner looked brilliant. He took them to 96 for 1. They were pretty much in it. They had 46 balls left, needing 55, and should have had the game in hand. And then he holed out, and the rest of it fell away fast.
Yeah, Shabazz Ahmed ended up being the most influential bowler in the game, 3 for 7 from 2. At the end, in the middle of that collapse, 3 wickets in quick succession. I mean, you look at that scorecard and you, it's impossible to believe that Sunrisers didn't get over the line, but that doesn't take into consideration how tough it was to bat towards the end.
And that's why Warner stood out. So the way he was pairing the sweep with the reverse sweep against the spin bowlers, he was playing his pull shots and his paddles, he was coming down the wicket. He looked so crisp and clean with his timing, and it was really a lucky break for Kyle Jamieson, the bowler for RCB, that he had Warner held on the boundary line. And then, that 17th over, the Shabazz Ahmed over, not the bowler you necessarily turn to with his innocuous spin, but that was a gamble, and it paid off spectacularly for Kohli. 3 wickets in the over. I mean, we were doing the live stream watch along with Daniel Norcross, and we were both saying this is either a masterstroke or a terrible idea. And it turned out to be a masterstroke, because he got rid of Bairstow and Manish Pandey and Abdul Samad in the same over, and suddenly the game was all but RCB's.
So RCB 2 from 2 going very nicely. Rajasthan in their first fixture, there were 24 sixes hit. The complete opposite at Mumbai up against the Delhi Capitals. And they were able to chase down a target of 148 with some 6 hitting. But it took till the very end of the game, which again reinforces that it's a different kind of IPL so far. It's not necessarily being set up for the blasters. It's being set up for guys who are clever.
Yeah, and it was really good seam bowling off the top for Rajasthan against the Delhi Capitals. That's what undermined them initially. They were 37 for 4. So Jaidev Unadkat, who missed out on the first match, got brought back into the team for this game, and picked up 3 for 15 across his bowling spell. Remarkable. Mustafizur Rahman, the Bangladeshi bowler, beautiful spell from him as well. He's managed to, I don't know what it is, but he's getting this left arm delivery that he's flicking out of the wrist a la Murali, but he's doing it at pace, meaning it's something of a slower ball, but it sticks in the pitch. And he was able to bowl it as a Yorker, so he was hitting the stumps with it as well. It was so good to see him back and firing. He's been such an exciting bowler, had a dip for the last couple of years, I guess, but if he can get back amongst things, and then that they rounded out that left arm squad that they've got with Chetan Sakaria, who's made such an impact in his first game to start the tournament. But 3 left armers, not something that you see outside of Pakistan teams very often.
So Rishabh Pant top scores with 51 from 32. So they made 147 for 8. Weren't able to defend it per the 5th and 6th games of the tournament, where that was just about enough to get over the line. Rajasthan, thanks to Miller and Morris, the 2 men who do much the same job in many respects, or have done at different points through their T20 careers, they were able to stick the landing. Yeah,
well, it was Miller putting them in the position where winning was conceivable, I suppose, because Rajasthan, they looked really out of it. So, look, okay, they had Delhi 37 for 4, but then Rajasthan were 36 for 4 themselves in reply, and then 42 for 5. They didn't have the recovery as early. So Delhi had Rishabh Pant doing it on his own, basically making that half century and getting them up to some sort of competitive score. Rajasthan, they were falling away, and it was down to Miller and Tewatia just building something. Rahul Tewatia just hung on for a while, didn't do anything spectacular, but made 19 off 17 balls and was support for Miller. And as you mentioned earlier, nobody had hit a six in the first 36 overs of the match. And in the 37th, Miller bombs a couple in a row and then gets out trying the third. And you thought, oh, well, that's it. It's all over. Enter Chris Morris. There's been so much talk about how much money he went for. It's pretty unfair on a player in a way, because you can't help what someone is willing to bid for you at the auction. But then supporters get angry with you for not being worth, that over wasn't worth $2.4 million. And they get furious at you in sort of retrospectively. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense. But Morris had his moment. He batted a couple of sixes off Rabada in the 19th over, his countryman. And then Tom Curran bowled a pretty rank last over, just gave him a nice short one to baseball away for six, and then a big full toss to flick for six as well. Rishabh Pant said it was getting pretty hard to bowl out there with the dew later in the evening, and so Curran couldn't grip the ball, so that's some explanation for it. But Morris, 36 of 18, unbeaten at the death, and basically Rajasthan should have been like the other two teams the previous two nights and failed to get there, but managed to get a bit lucky and get over the line thanks to Morris's swinging.
And Delhi coach Ricky Ponting on the bench there, Jeff, not a happy man.
It's fascinating to see his face, with the real classic grumpy Ricky Ponting face, a la 2009, 2010, 11 with the Ashes in Australia, etc. That face was back. It took me back in time. But tactically, a few things to look at. Ravichandran Ashwin only bowled 3 overs, none for 14 off his 3 overs, and didn't bowl the fourth. So that could be looked at tactically. A few problems for Delhi, and Ponting will have to sort those out.
So the IPL rolls on through the course of the weekend. The next game today's Punjab Kings against the mighty CSK. Couple of double headers. It's going to be exciting as always. We'll be back with the speed round on Monday, I reckon, Jeff.
Monday sounds good after a big weekend, double headers and all the rest. So thanks for watching. Thanks to everyone who's signed up and subscribing. We're ploughing on through the subscribers, and it's great to have your company.
It absolutely is. Patreon.com/The Final Word if you want to contribute to what we're doing financially with the show. And of course, our IPL correspondent for The Final Word, Glenn Maxwell, with us each week on YouTube and on the podcast feed. Have a great weekend. We love the IPL.